So thank you for joining us. And again, Jessica, Minier, thank you.
Awesome. Great to have you here.
Thanks.
I think, are we good to kick off?
Good to kick off.
Yeah, great, fantastic. So we have an awesome discussion to be had about monetization. And this is something that's very near and dear to my heart and my position at the Institute of International Finance. We are constantly being approached or discussing with financial institutions as they think about building out AI programs and applications and thinking about how they monetize it, how the cost of putting money in versus the benefit of getting money out is definitely at the fore. I'm sure not just for the financial industry, but for many industries.
Right.
So I'm excited to talk about this with you today and get to value where we started earlier in the day. But first, just a quick little background, and I'll kick it to you, Ilan. A quick little background for the audience about Navan, which is a 10-year-old technology company transforming corporate travel and expense management. From its inception, Navan has leveraged the latest technologies to make travel easy for every frequent traveler, including machine learning and AI. Customers include some of the world's biggest companies, including Unilever, Adobe, Netflix, Reddit, and Reuters. And when ChatGPT arrived, like so many of you here, Ilan immediately got to work. So tell us a bit about that work for the last few years.
Yeah, cool. So I'm a software engineer, so I like technology. And I've been, on top of any new technology that came out in the past 40 years since I'm in this business. When ChatGPT came out, it caught me completely unprepared. I was really blown away by the capabilities that it demonstrated. And, I studied computer science, and in computer science, we learn about the Turing test. And Turing test attempts to determine whether computers can think or not. It's a test. They can pass or fail. And it was they came up with it, Alan Turing came up with it in 1949. And throughout the years, no software or computer was even getting close to passing that test. And then ChatGPT just breezed through it so easily. And it was definitely shocking to everyone. It was, by the way, shocking to its own creators as well. I heard Sam Altman saying it firsthand, that they were shocked by what came out from the model, that they did not anticipate it. And it actually makes sense because the underlying technology that enables the training of large language models, the transformer, was not there until, let's say, 2018. It was 2017, late 2017, when this very important paper, Attention is All You Need, came out. And it kind of lays out how the architecture might look like to enable the development or the training of such large models. And since then, there was a chain of events, like we started to see bigger models coming out. But again, in 2 years, we've seen models from 20 million parameters all the way to 175 billion parameters that ChatGPT had. And obviously, it was new to the world. What's happening inside this brain, no one knows until today. Now, at the same time, there was all of these headlines that it's going to transform everything, which, by the way, I subscribe to all of them. I think that it is bigger than the Industrial Revolution. But headlines around, you will not need engineers anymore, and there will not be attorneys anymore, and even artists, or et cetera, et cetera. So I became really paranoid that a smaller startup that is based on this technology would come and disrupt and kill Navan. That's what I was afraid of. But at the same time, to me in my head, it was so new. And I knew that no one knows anything about it. So we know what we know. It can write amazing poems, and it can reason to some extent. But what are all the other things that we do not know about? Can I actually put this thing out in production on a customer-facing role, for example, and trust it? There was no answer. So, and in my head, it was like discovering radioactivity. Why? Because it's new. They discovered it, and they knew what they knew about it. So you could do like an X-ray with it, which is amazing. But there were many other things that they did not know about radioactivity, and some people ended up paying with their lives later on. And I see the parallel to AI, to these mega large language models. So in order for me to use it, I had to discover the other features of this LLM, so I had to experiment with it. And the only way for me to understand something is to touch it. So I actually set up my own lab with a very, very strong GPU where I could deploy LLMs onto it and touch it. And I wanted to see, censored models is what we all interact with, but what happens when you interact with uncensored models? So in the open source community, there are lots of models that are uncensored. Can you manipulate it? Does it know what lie is and what's the power behind lying? Will it lie in order not to lose? These are really important questions to ask before you deploy something like that out in production. You need to know how it behaves.
What did you find?
My conclusion was that hell no. I'm not going to use this thing out in production. Yeah, that was my conclusion. Because
it's a strong conclusion.
Yes. And by the way, if you think about it, 2 years down the road, and all of these headlines, none of it was fulfilled. If you open you will see everywhere that there is wanted for engineers. Engineers are being hired, they're being paid a lot. Same with attorneys. I know how much I'm paying for my attorneys. It's outrageous. But yeah, so very, very interesting.
So why do you think if there are all these headliners that say, hey, we're not going to hire engineers anymore because AI will replace all of them? Why? So is it the hell no? Why do you think that hasn't happened and they haven't come and gotten Navan?
Yeah.
You're worried.
I thought about it. I thought about how to explain it, and actually it's very intuitive and very simple. So to me, what I was trying to do in Navan, I was the most critical use case for us was travel agents, because we are a pre-IPO company. We think about our financials. In a journey of a startup, at some point you start worrying about gross margins and cost of operation. And we wanted to reduce the cost of operation, and focusing on the support organization made a lot of sense. But when I hire travel agents, I tend to interview them first. So I have an interview, and they either pass or they fail. So now let's imagine that I have an interview with an LLM, because that's what I want to replace it with. So if you interview an LLM, tell me about yourself, they would start really strong. They would say, I'm fluent in 200 plus languages, for example. I can read, write, and speak like a mother tongue. That's wow, amazing. And I have this very, very vast, general knowledge on pretty much everything. And specifically on travel, I know everything there is to know on travel. Everything. Amazing. So at that point, I'm pretty impressed as the interviewer. And then there is this question that we all ask in the interviews. Tell me about areas of improvement. So the typical human would say, I strive for perfection. I work too hard, blah, 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 blah. Okay. When you ask the LLM that same question, the answer would be different. So the LLM would say, sure, I'll share with you my improvement areas. I lie, and I lie with super high confidence. If you correct me, then I'll admit the lie, and I will provide the right answer. But I lie. The second thing is, if you give me instructions, I'll follow most of them most of the time. But here's my promise. I will not follow some of them some of the time. I promise to you. And which one and when, I can't tell you. TBD. And the other thing that they would say is, some of your users will be able to manipulate me to do things that you do not want me to do. Things that could be harmful to the company, could be harmful to the user, just really don't want, but they will be able to do that. But other than that, I'm always awake. I can work 24/7. So if I ask you, would you hire an employee like that tell you this thing? The answer is no. No one would ever hire an employee that says, I lie. That's LLMs. The LLMs lie. LLMs, and that's why you do not see them replacing humans yet.
So how do we get from then that, which obviously isn't usable for the purpose of a travel agent or otherwise, to something that is? So if we get back to kind of the conversation of agentic AI, how do you actually make a useful agent?
Yeah. So here's the rest of the story. I didn't give up. When I said hell no, it was me understanding, having a much better understanding on this technology. So yes, I was blown away by its capabilities, and I still am. But then I was aware of the shortfalls. And that's what I need. When I try new technologies, when I tried Java for the first time, it was amazing because the language was so easy compared to C. But it had lots of issues. It was running out of memory. Okay, so now that I know that it runs out of memory often, I know that I will not deploy software based on Java in a missile to guide the missile. Why? Because if it runs out of memory, there could be a disaster. But can I use it inside the browser? Yes, if there's a problem. You refresh the page, it reloads, and no problem. So same thing with this technology. So I had to overcome those problems. And my realization, because by the way, I was paranoid. I was like thinking that I'm about to be killed by young startups that are using this technology. So I had to come up with a solution. And I realized that in order to solve it, I actually borrowed a lot of concepts from the real world. In a support center, in a call center, there are supervisors. And what they do is all of the calls are being recorded for quality assurance purposes. We all hear that. And so what happens then? On the Friday at the end of the week, the supervisor or the lead sits with the agent and they review one or two conversations, and they have a chit chat about it and provide some feedback in order to improve. So here's what happens with my bot. Whenever the bot wants to say, even respond to a basic hello, hi, and say, hey, how are you? How can I help you? This sentence goes through a supervisor, a different LLM, for review. Any response goes to another LLM for review. Now you may ask, okay, but the other LLM may have this problem. And the answer is no. If you ever did bump into this, when I say lie, it's the equivalent of hallucinations of the models. It's a byproduct of this architecture, the transformer. LLMs have hallucinations, all of them. If you correct it, it would apologize and tell you, you're right, sorry, and then it will provide the right answer. So that's in a separate prompt. With the same LLM, separate prompt, it would acknowledge its own hallucination, let alone if it's a separate LLM. So if you take an LLM and give it a conversation to review and say, hey, is there any hallucination there? They wouldn't. They would provide a really good answer, very accurate. In fact, the bot that we have today that is based off of what I just started to describe, this architecture that we ended up building with supervisors. There's no one. There is it's a collection of LLMs, nearing 200 LLMs working with each other. In a way, what we ended up building is something that is, I call it Navan cognition. It's a highly functioning cognitive system. LLMs are not. LLMs are smart things, but they're not functioning cognitive system. They O1 and DeepSeek V3 and some of these models, they have some ability to do back and forth with themselves. But what we do very naturally, humans, when you ask me a question, now I'm sitting on a stage, I think very carefully before I say stuff. And that's the process that LLMs do not do. And if the crowd would be different, it would be my family and best friends, I would apply less filters, and it would be a different conversation. With LLMs, it does not work this way. So I realized very quickly that this whole process of thinking does not exist in LLMs, and therefore, how would you trust a creature that has all of these downfalls, shortfalls, to talk to your customers? And the conversations that our users have with this bot, it could be around refunds, it could be around canceling the flight, and it might better be their own flight and not like some hallucinated flight. It can be about extending their hotel stay. So for the first 4 months, 5 months, I did not develop a bot. I developed Navan Cognition. It's a framework that ensures that this thing can think and mimic the human behavior. And the bot has been released about a year ago. Today it carries, I just checked before the interview, The first few days of January, we crossed the 7,000 chats per day for the first time. So 7,000 chats this bot handles. Less than 40% of them get to the live agent. So it actually solves close to 60%. But here is the deal. I can tomorrow deploy a bot that would deflect or solve 90%. How would I do it? I'll take a single LLM and ask it to roll a dice. And if it's 1 through 9, let's say, that's 90%, it would tell the user, sorry, I'm busy, come back tomorrow. And there's no agent for you. So it will deflect the user. And if it's 10, it would actually support it. So there's competing forces. There is deflection, but there is user satisfaction because we also ask for satisfaction. So imagine that user that I'm telling it, hey, come back tomorrow. By the way, how was I? I will get a 0. So the goal is to get to a high deflection with a high CSAT. Otherwise, it doesn't count. It's like it's useless. And I have no respect to bots that deflect. And that's why I hate bots. That's why we all hate bots, because their goal is to deflect, not to solve.
Yeah.
And these bots that I call, I will not name the companies, but name of the companies, but it feels like their only goal is to frustrate me before they move me to the live agent. It's like they ask me for my life story, they ask me for my social security number, they ask me for my mother's name, and then they move me to an agent, and then the agent asks me the same question. It's like, Argh.
So what I'm hearing, because I want to connect this to the monetization standpoint, because that's value. Because if you're frustrated by a bot, or you're frustrated by something significantly, and clients are going to be frustrated, then it's much harder to monetize things at the end of the day because it turns off your customers. But what I hear is critical is identifying that LLMs are not cognitive systems.
Yes.
And Navan has built a cognitive system
Yes.
where the LLMs supervise each other. In a way that allows kind of the repeatability of actual credible responses
Yes.
that are not intended to frustrate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the only way for me to trust an employee or to trust a bot is to know that it's always going to perform, that I can trust it all the time. All it takes for it is to cancel the wrong flight once for me to fire that employee, and the bot, I will fire the bot. Like, it cannot fuck it up. Mm-hmm. Zero fuck ups. Zero.
Yeah.
Especially because it's a bot. Like, it must be zero. And it is like building trust with the users. And this is where I was really, I wanted to quantify how much money the bot saves us. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that the only way to do it, it's complicated with the support centers. The best way to do it is to run an A/B test. So 5% of the population will never get to the bot. They always get to a live agent directly. I start a chat, get to a live agent. 5% of the same population always get to the bot. And then we can compare what was the overall cost for this group and the overall cost for that group. I was shocked to see the numbers. It's in the millions per month. But more importantly, a week into this experiment, I'm getting a call from one of our customer success managers. And she tells me that one of her customers complains that we have a bug in the system. And I said, okay, we have bugs, but what about? And she says, she never gets the bot. And I'm like, okay, what's the complaint? She wants the bot. And I don't believe I don't believe in fairy tales. So I wanted to talk to her. She's real. She's an admin in a big company, global company. She supports the executives, and she also manages other admins that book travel for others. So she's like a super admin. And she uses the bot. And I asked her, explain to me, what was it that you miss so much in this bot that you do not get from the live agents? I mean, it's live agents. And she said, your bot is never wrong. And when it doesn't know, it takes me to an agent. I don't need to wait for it. It's available all the time. And she says, all the people that reach out to me for support, I used to send them to the bot. And now they're getting to an agent, and they need to wait. And sometimes the agent needs to put them on hold while they talk to a lead or someone else to some expert, because we support travel and we support expense and we support, the product. How do I add my frequent flyer to my profile, for example? So the bot knows all of this information and provides answers, very accurate answers. And she got addicted to, and the bot also has one tool that it can choose to use, and that's the live agent. So if it knows that it doesn't know, it sends them to an agent with all of the context so that it will not annoy the user. And the agent continues the conversation from where the bot kind of stopped. I find that to be very exciting. I can share with you that, sometimes the bot would say, I read a lot of conversations. Sometimes the bot would say, for this matter, let me move you to a live agent. And then the user would say, oh, I thought that I'm talking to a live agent. Things like that. In fact, I have LLMs that review all of the conversations, 6,000, 7,000 conversations every day. They wake up in the middle of the night, they read the conversations, and they do stuff for me. They highlight conversations that require my attention to improve the bot. They highlight conversations where I can be proud because the user clearly did not know that it's a bot. So very, very exciting.
I think you have achieved things that a lot of other people should probably take note of. I certainly would like to have a positive experience with a bot. I find that I oftentimes do not, so perhaps I'm talking to the wrong ones. And certainly, though, it seems like there's clear value that you've been able to measure and monetize enough that you would get such a response to say, I would rather have the bot than not. And still, in some ways, I get back to the concept of having a human still in the loop.
Right.
I think it's very fascinating that you bring up that the bot has a tool, and the tool is a human. Which is a different way of thinking about it than I've heard so far. So I think good things for us to think about. I think we're going to wrap up here. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Cool. Thank you so much.
And we will all have to go get to know your bot.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Give it back to Jamie.
Please give a hand. Thanks all. So in a few minutes' time, we've been listening to a lot of content and thought leadership this morning, and we hope to give everyone in the room the opportunity to take some of that